Dear Zacchaeus, I've always been proud of my calling. I, Levi of Capernaum, son of Alphaeus, like you, tax collecting has been my whole life. I always thought it was one of the gifts that the Romans gave to us. It was so easy. The Romans would auction off tax collecting to the highest bidder, and as long as they got the taxes, how much the tax collector raised was up to them. Naturally, by the time we've added on our cut for expenses and protection and the blessings we brought to the community, our education experience, it ended up being a tidy sum. What with the ground tax of 10% for grain and 5% for fruit and grapes, import and export duty of up to 12%, taxes for bridges, roads, markets and harbours, for carts and wheels and axles, buying or selling. Then, of course, the poll tax, 1% of your income for all males aged 14 to 65 and females aged 12 to 65. Who wouldn't want to be a tax collector? Fantastic job opportunities for someone like me who wanted the best lifestyle, and I've got it. Best house, the finest food and wines, softest clothing, wife, servants, and the envy of the whole community. Like you, I'm a self-made man, and I'm proud of it. Despite all that, I have to say I can admit that tax collecting has its downside. I was saying about people in the community envying me, but to be honest, I think hating me would be more accurate. I've never been really worried before, just pitied those whose lack of education meant they could never aspire to what I've been able to achieve. Nor I've minded not being allowed to worship in the synagogue. Sometimes I remember the times when I was a boy, sitting at the rabbi's feet, learning the scriptures, but look where it gets you, nowhere. Whereas money opens the door to everything. I suppose what money doesn't buy you is friends. Real friends, I mean. I've plenty of friends who come and enjoy my food and wine, who laugh with me and tell me what a great job I do. But sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to have someone who I could really talk to, share my thoughts and feelings with, my hopes and fears. If I did that with any of my friends now, I imagine they would think I'd gone nuts. Either that, or it'd be all round Capernaum in a few hours. There's no real depth to what we have. I wonder if that type of real relationship would be possible. Has money really brought me the best life I could have? Is there more to life than this? Counting denarii and shekels, haggling here at the town gate with those coming in, making sure I haven't been cheated, and all for what? To make sure I'm richer and richer, and maybe, if I'm honest, more despised, more lonely and isolated. A prisoner or even a slave to this system I've bought into. The idea that money gives you power and wealth and status and therefore happiness. But there is no other way, is there? Well, that is how I thought until I met him. Well, I'd seen him before and heard something about him. This man, Jesus, an ordinary looking chap, often followed by a group of men and women, fishermen and the likes. I'd seen them coming in and out of the gate a few times. Their clothing and manners were nothing like mine, and to be honest, I despised them. I knew how much I was better than that little lot. I knew Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, also their cousins James and John, for they were fishermen, and bringing fish in and out of the out for sale meant that I had to charge them for tax. I made quite a bit of money out of them over the years. Not quite sure what they saw in this Jesus chap. Comes from Nazareth, they say. Supposed to be some type of teacher and miracle worker. I wondered if he charged for that. If he did, then he would need to pay tax. I thought maybe I needed to find out a bit more of what he was up to. That day was different. I was sitting in my tax booth at the gate as usual. Quite a few carts in, wheel and axle tax to be paid, as well as goods to sell when they came in. Jesus, with his group of followers, came in. As they came past my booth, Jesus stopped and looked at me. I couldn't help meeting his eyes, and the look he gave me really startled me. It was a look of love and compassion that went right through me. I felt he really knew me for who I was, not just the good bits, but the bad as well. It made me feel somewhat shabby inside. As he looked at me, it was as though part of me was melting away, as though my outer skin was being peeled off. And there I was, naked and exposed, and yet in his face was such tenderness, concern, and love. It can only have lasted a few seconds, and then he said the words, "Follow me." And it was as though I'd been waiting to hear them all my life. He was someone who knew and yet cared. Here at last was a person who didn't despise me, but wanted me as a real friend. Then I realized that what I'd been was worthless. I was being given a chance to do something better. So I got up, told my assistant the business was his, and followed Jesus. Suddenly I felt free. For the first time when I was a child, I didn't have to pretend. It didn't matter. Jesus seemed to know all about me and still wanted me. I am a tax collector and I'm acceptable. And do you know what the first thing I did was? Threw a party. Had Jesus and his friends and my friends to dinner. Tax collectors and sinners eating round a table. Totally scandalous. The religious leaders have had a field day, but it didn't matter because Jesus told us that God's kingdom is not about how religious you are, but how much you love God and want to follow him. I now have a new name. I am Matthew, a Greek name which means gift of God. Me, a tax collector, despised and rejected by my fellow Jews, is a gift of God. Jesus talks about building up treasure in heaven, and I'm beginning to understand. I may have left my life of money, but I still have my education. I can do what none of my fellow disciples can, and that is write well. One day I will write down the stories and teachings of Jesus, the miracles I've seen. And just as I spent time in looking at the detail of taxes, so I look at the detail of his life, find out about his birth, and see how the Jewish scriptures show he is the Messiah. Life with Jesus is so different. His kingdom is for those like me. I have a place, I have real friends, and I have love. He talks about a family and God as our Father. I'm proud to say that I'm Matthew of the kingdom of heaven, son of the living God. Maybe one day Jesus will come to Jericho and you will see him for yourself. Maybe your life will be changed too. Regards, Matthew, former tax collector of Capernaum.